Okay, we are talking international trade, and I am Kelly Bredesen, and this is for legal environment for global organizations. Now, when we're talking about free trade, we're going to define it as no restrictions on the imports or the exports to or from other countries. Basically, it's promoting trade without having any additional funds being allocated towards the shipments or the exports from other countries. When we're talking about free trade, we want to pay attention to the NAFTA, North American Free Trade Act, which has been around for about 20 years. The European Union, the internal market of the European Union, which is pretty much similar to NAFTA, but within the European Union. And then finally, we've got the World Trade Organization, the WTO, which is made up of all the countries who participate in the World Trade Organization. First off, we want to talk about NAFTA. Highly controversial as far as what it's actually done after we have a 20-year sample size. Essentially, it's the reduction of taxes between all three countries in North America: U.S., Canada, and Mexico, exclusively with those three. The tariff policies of NAFTA affect only the goods produced directly within these three nations, so it's exclusive for Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Now, it's much more easier for Mexico to import products from the United States, which has severely impacted the role of Mexican farmers, just because of the higher output of American agriculture is a big piece to if NAFTA is working or not. Um, Immigration has gotten worse between Mexico and the United States since NAFTA's inception about 20 years ago, and that's one of the big talking points and criticisms of the North American Free Trade Agreement. A picture's worth a thousand words. You can see Uncle Sam, the Mountie, and Mexico all there kind of pulling for the goods and the services. You see the vehicles, the technology. Obviously, agriculture is a big piece of that. This is kind of a visual representation of what NAFTA has become and what it's been defined as. Um, when we talk, let's get outside of NAFTA for a while and look at the bigger picture for the whole global free trade. I'm going to argue that free trade is a very good thing. It's going to create employment opportunities, not just for our country, but for all countries who participate in free trade. It will yield lower prices for oil, as most countries are industrialized, always seeking a lower cost per barrel for oil. Free trade in the world does create economic growth. It also allows for foreign exchange gain. All these countries have products and need other products, and with free trade, it's just gonna allow for more exchange gain within those countries. And free trade will always reduce the price that consumers will ultimately have to pay, which is a huge argument for advocating free trade. If you look at the slide on the right hand side from the Pew Research Center, kind of shows you from the early 2000s until the right around 2009, 2010 about the impact of the free trade agreements. And this is the overall perception of people thinking it's a good thing or a bad thing. As you can see, it's kind of shifted as opposing for a good thing or a bad thing. But when we're talking about the argument against free trade, um, a huge piece of it, and you hear this a lot in the news, is that it takes away jobs from Americans. There's a lot of different ways to argue that, but cut and dry, it is true that NAFTA or free trade also is going to take away jobs from Americans, putting them in other countries. It's going to harm the environment. It's just increasing to pollution for these industrialized countries. And the workers, are put in unfavorable working positions, paid very low wages, um, which can kind of oppress these workers in desolate places in certain countries. Free trade, it does directly affect the local producers and small businesses. It's hard for them to compete on a global level. And so this is a very apt criticism for free trade. A lot of people, a lot of Americans, from this Newsweek poll here, when we first started NAFTA and the free trade, there was a lot of people who were proponents with it. 20 years go by, you see that 66% feel that the free trade hurts the economy, as opposed to the small amount of people who actually think that free trade is going to help the economy. And here you will see the references cited within the slides.